I wish we had all day to play, and all the stuff we're talking about here was always present and top of mind, and always a sublime experience. And I'm always seeking that. But some days it's just like, dude, here's what I need from you. Like, let's get it done, you know? And you got to be that guy too.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Tommy Dewey is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new role?
It's always kind of changing. I read it a bunch first. As I've been doing this longer and longer, I try to kind of, if this makes sense, read it in a kind of neutral way. Just let it kind of flow through me, really hear it, try to do it in a quiet space, try to read it start to finish, especially the first time, to just get a sense of the full story arc and the tone and all that stuff. And then I'll read it a couple more times. Now, it is case by case insofar as if it's a comedy and I can hear it and it's working for me, the humor is working, I maybe just read it once and then stay the hell away from it. Because I think comedy is really elusive, you know.
What are you worried about? Like,
I'm worried about getting anything too set, you know. I think you can get a little too clever with comedy. And if you hear it the first time, probably means that your intuition is lining up with the humor of that character in that piece of writing, and it'll be there on the day, as long as you know your lines. So I kind of stay away from it. If it's more emotional work, then I do get a little reflective. I start to kind of audit my own life for similar moments. You know, some people talk about, you know, substitutions. I don't use that word a lot, but like, you know, how am I like this guy? What kind of emotional well can I pull from if you know, when this stuff gets heavier? So I'll do a little more work there. I used to do this more as a younger actor, but if something felt like a reach, I was just glad to have the job and pay the bill.
Yeah.
And I would maybe do some, this is going to sound maybe, I don't know, more methody than I intend it to be. I would do some writing as the character. I would just start sort of free associating, having read the script, write as the guy, man, this other character, you know, bugs the shit out of me because of this, that, you know, and just and sloppy. It's not good writing, and it's just yellow legal pad. I found one of these the other day, and just to see if I can kind of bridge the gap. You know, if you know, I can think of a handful of jobs where I'm not sure why they hired me, but you gotta you gotta make rent, and so that felt like, you know.
It's got to help, right?
A little more work was required there. But.
And something about that, just thoughts are coming out that wouldn't have come out if you didn't start writing. And there are things inside you that are connections with the character that you didn't realize. Suddenly you're seeing it.
Yeah.
And it allows you to believe.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, and you're building a little bank of subtext that can work for you. Thing. You know what else I do is I love language, and if I'm taking notes as I'm preparing, it's usually about, I have a question for the writer and or director about the meaning of something. I will also note when something kind of feels clunky, doesn't move through me, I'm not hearing it. Yeah. You know, and I'll have a conversation. You know, I'll bring some notes to set to have a conversation about. You know, I think the writing should be sacred, but to the extent a writer is willing to work with you, be like, do you mind if I say it like this? I just think it's gonna work better with my voice and you know, and with this character. So I do spend a little time poring over language because I want everything to be clear on day one, you know, so that I can set intention and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I keep hearing similar stories like this over and over. It's really strange. You have one, which is that when you were young, you were a runner or something like that. You got hurt.
Yeah.
And so you had to take this class, comedy class or theater, something with the theater, right?
Yes.
Which you never would have if you didn't get hurt.
I like to entertain people, and this is probably, from some old wound that it's better worked out with a shrink. But like I was an athlete in high school, mostly track and field guy. But I did do a play, and I emceed most of the pep rallies. So I had, I liked. I was kind of acting adjacent. Broke my foot getting ready for my freshman cross country season in college, and I wasn't like a top national talent, but I liked it, and I've come back to it as an older guy now. But and wanted something to sink my teeth into, and I saw I went to Princeton, saw the sketch and improv group perform, and was intrigued. There's some really talented people in the group, some of who've gone on to careers in entertainment. But I thought, what the hell, I'll audition. I need something to get me through the fall. And by the time winter came around and the coach called, I said, no, I've got the bug. I don't, I can't imagine having to get back in shape and running track now. Yeah. And that led to writing my own stuff and auditioning for more serious stuff, taking some playwriting classes. So that comedy group was kind of my starter drug. Yeah. But yeah, it was, like you say, you've heard this story a lot. I have two people that are, track and field requires a certain dedication, devotion, obsession, and like I need something like that to kind of chew on, and I, for better or worse, I found it in acting and writing and making stuff.
Well, you say for better or for worse, but you've made it a career. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's your life. I know. That's what I can't wrap my arms around.
It's for better. I'm doing some kind of.
And do you think you would have
thing.
come to this if you continued track? Do you know what I mean? Or how do you where do you place that?
I think, and I didn't think I would have come to it professionally still, because I really didn't think it was possible. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I didn't know an actor. Famously, Courtney Cox went to my high school, but she's older than me. I didn't have access to Courtney. It just seemed like something, and I hate that I thought this at the time, but it felt unserious. That I needed to be a lawyer, go to Wall Street, or something like that. And then I had a talent manager see me in a play my senior year at Princeton, said, why don't you give it a whirl next year? I'll represent you. Because I don't know that I would have had the courage to show up in New York. I was always going to move to New York for a couple of years, show up, print out a bunch of headshots and resumes, and just, knock on casting offices and pass those things out. That was a stroke of good fortune, that I was able to do it. But one thing I'm pretty certain of is that this desire to do it would have reared its head in some way. Yeah. Possibly ugly 20 years into another career.
Exactly.
Damn it, I should have. It does feel like my calling. But I landed and I fell into it kind of awkwardly, I guess.
How did you approach auditions coming into it the way you came into it?
As a kind of A student, to a fault, thinking that hard work always yields better results, I would really work stuff. I mean, I would know the material backwards and forwards. I'd have too many ideas, and sometimes even still, that's good for an audition, because an audition is a tricky process. You're not capturing a chemistry that exists between two people often, unless you've got the best reader in the world. So it's a little bit of a different thing. So some of these rules still apply, but early on, I just wanted to seem really pro and really reliable. If it, if this guy did all this work for an audition, surely we can hire him and not worry about him.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I took a very, from the earliest stages, took the profession of doing it very seriously. And now I approach it more loosely. Not that I don't learn my lines, but I was holding on too tight then. Now looking back, and things become too rigid and stuff like that. But that said, you know, and I still audition some. Like there's a certain kind of nervousness that exists in auditions that doesn't exist on a set, and there's, you know, a room full of people staring at you. I still probably over prepare a little bit, you know, just because I want to control those variables. Whereas when I get on a set, it's become more about doing a little bit of work we talked about, but then just having the lines cold and opening yourself up to the present moment and the experience of the day, you know, and the guidance of the director.
Are there other things like that, like what you just said about you now take a much more loose approach to auditions, and that's actually helpful because you're malleable? Is there other things that you can think of that has changed over the years for you, that you were so sure that this aspect was so important in the beginning, and now you're like, no, it's actually not important?
This is not exactly the answer to your question, but I think is really become a key piece of it for me, and I think is a key to great acting is relaxing. That sounds so simple, and that is not something you can really set out to do. That's a kind of, that's a 10,000 hours thing. You know, that's finally getting to be the lead of a television show and being there 12 hours a day, day in, day out, and one day you think, oh, I'm actually not worried about what other people think. You know, I know what everyone on the set does now. It feels comfortable to me, and the game slows down, and you can and you have easier access to your emotions, and just like, so I think I thought early on that it, and maybe this is the old, you know, runner in me, a day of work needed to feel effortful. And sometimes it does, you know, and it's often exhausting because it's just a lot of walking, talking, running around. And I'd like to say I learned to relax, but it just kind of finally happened, and I was able to. I don't know. It just the work kind of expanded for me at that point. And I think early on, to a certain extent, I mean, you know, there's certain kinds of joke-driven comedies where you can find the jokes and nail them. Now, if you take that approach too far, it stops feeling honest and real and organic and stuff like that. But like for, you know, some early comedy guest starring gigs, I can think like, I better know where the jokes are. You know, because there's going to be, you know, people that are going to hire me for the next thing watching. And I just need to, frankly, some of those early things be like, I just need to get to the end of the week and do a good job, you know, so that I can get the next job. And so I would scrutinize the material a little more than I do now. And, you know, it's at the end of the day, some of it is pretty simple, which is just, you know, approaching it with confidence and relaxation to the extent you can, and the paradox is that gets a lot easier when you move up the call sheet. You know, like it's really tough when you're there for a week and they're like, you're the victim of this crime, and so Thursday we're doing this scene, you gotta cry, you know, and some famous person who you've been watching all your life is going to be interrogating you. I mean, that's a whole other kind of work. I mean, and then that's I mean, you cannot relax in that situation. Maybe some people can, but I'm way too neurotic, you know. And so you know, it's like it's a bit of like, I don't know, survival, kill or be killed early on to some extent. You know?
If that's something that has gotten better as you moved up the call sheet, what are some things that were challenges as you moved up the call sheet? I mean, especially as like years for instance, 4 and 5 go on. In a show, do you feel like, oh, I need to now maybe step into the writer's room, producing, put on these hats now?
I like those hats, and I've always had a writing career in some form or fashion going on parallel to my acting career, and I think they both feed one another. And I'm producing more now, which I genuinely enjoy doing it. And I also think, just if I'm being completely selfish as an actor, the more time I've spent in those rooms, in those meetings, in the production, the more comfortable, going back to being relaxed, the more comfortable I am. Oh, I talked about this with the director. I feel settled in this little company we've formed. I feel important to it in a way that if I was just a hired gun, I would not. I think I might get lost giving this answer, but I think that if there's a greater pressure, it's that, because you're taking up more real estate on a film or TV show or whatever, you've the pressure to make it three-dimensional and human is a little more. If you pop into 2 or 3 scenes, you can play a little broader, and you can be a flatter character. Not that you would want to, set out to do that or be content with doing that.
It's not
but you can get away with it.
It's not going to ruin the show.
Yeah. And I think what I find myself doing a little more is I'm a little more vigilant about, like, let's I'm always going to defer to the director, but and you don't want to do this in real time while you're performing, but like before I move on from a scene, I'm like, did that feel honest? I mean, I hate to use the word real. That's so vague, and especially if you're doing something stylized, there's a negotiation between real and honest and style, and and that's fun and cool. But are there those sort of moments of real humanity in the work we just did? Because then someone will take that ride. They'll live with that guy for a half an hour, an hour and a half, whatever. And the good news is, the more you work, the more comfortable you are with that. The more of your own humanity you can bring to it. Those lines start to blur in a good way.
I was shocked at how much I loved Your Monster.
Oh, thanks.
I didn't know anything about this movie.
Yeah.
People send me things. This is a very good film, and that's a testament to you. I think that this performance in somebody else's hand, the whole movie falls apart. I know that you did this as a short film first, right? I'd love to know the differences between that. Did you land the character for yourself in the short film and just transferred it over? Did something change? I want to know how you decided on this approach toward him, because I think it's a very, very fine line that you have to dance here with, not only with funny and not funny, or real and absurd, or romantic. I mean, there's so many lines.
Yeah.
And ridiculous, because how could romance be in this, right? You know what I mean? So many lines, man. That's why this is even more impressive than I'm even saying.
Well, I mean, I so appreciate you pointing to that movie, because it's really special to me. I can't wait for whatever comes next for Caroline Lindy, who wrote and directed it. I hope I'm a part of it. She and I developed a real bond over the course of putting it together and moving it from a short to a feature. And my memory is not perfect, but I recall Caroline, she actually guest starred on a TV show I did called Casual for a few years. And she was in for a couple episodes, and we talked about her writing, and you do that, and we exchanged numbers, but I didn't think I'd ever hear from her ran into her at a yoga class in LA, which is the most LA thing imaginable. And she said, hey, I'm shortening the story, but basically she said, will you come and do this short for 3 days and play a monster? And I thought, cool, I'll just put on a mask for 3 days. That just sounds fun to me. No one's ever asked me to wear prosthetics. And so I thought of it as a chance to try something new, kick the rust off, whatever. And I want to give her credit for the idea that she was like, the mask is going to do all of the monster work. You just do your interpretation of this material. Ironically, the monster felt very human to me, and very, very, I hesitate to admit it, very close to who I am, and had the bonus effect of just erasing all vanity.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit what it looked like, and I wasn't trying to be cool or suave, whatever. I looked like hell, I looked like a monster. And so I was just like, I can play the kind of purity of this guy's snark, the difference between the short and not the purity of his snark, but because he's a softie also, and he falls in love with the protagonist. I don't think that's spoiling anything. That's the thrust of the feature. The short, he was a little more of a kind of fun mentor that lived in her closet, and tonally, and in terms of a genre mashup, akin to what we ended up doing in the feature. But the feature was when it really took on that classic romance. And you point to the humor. I think we ended up with what is at times a really funny movie. That was not. We didn't talk a lot about making it funny. Caroline's a funny writer. Melissa's a funny actor. I think I have decent comedy chops. We just played what if these two people have a crush on each other, and let's play the romance. And that's complicated by the fact that he's a friggin' monster, and he's also insecure, and she's she's going through the worst period of her life. I mean, I approached it the same way I approach everything. Once that prosthetic was on, I kind of take one look in the mirror in the morning and be like, oh yeah, I'm this thing again, and then that was it, and then just kind of do the work. The great thing about Melissa Barrera is it's the kind, I'm getting so rambly, but it's the kind of movie, it's the kind of stuff I love doing. It's mostly two-handers and just figuring out the shape of the scene. And then luckily both of us were willing to toss any kind of preconceived crap we came in with, toss that out and just find it between us. And after a couple days, it just started feeling really comfortable, and we were able to kind of put some grace notes on top of what was already there, do a little improvising. It's one of those jobs that made me better. You want to do the work that's in front of you and make the project you're working on great. I do think there is room during a production to try some stuff that will make you better for the next thing. I'm not saying do that at the expense of what you're trying to get, but maybe it's a master. She's not going to use the middle part of the scene. You're like, what if I try it like this? Is that a muscle I can flex and have that work? Not to, talk about it like a bag of tricks, but like you were talking about process and things that have changed. One thing that has helped me in almost 25 years of doing it is I will be just a little bit selfish a couple times during production and just take a wild swing at something.
And I bet you that sometimes those swings, they'll really land.
Yeah, and I would never do something that I thought would absolutely not work for what I was working on. And I don't even think that I'm consciously doing it in the moment thinking, oh, this is going to expand my repertoire in a wider generic sense. But I think it's easy to get complacent. I'm certainly guilty of it. But I think it's okay that while you are in the process of doing specific jobs, you were also thinking like, just it's somewhere in your mind that I could keep getting better at this, And what might I try in this little piece of coverage that would.
That's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, I'm saying that at the risk of it sounding like I'm not all in on what I'm doing, and that is not the case.
No, but I think it's really interesting because it also shows that you can only do that when you're confident and comfortable.
Yeah.
With the people around.
Well, and I wish I'd done a little more, and I think it would have helped the earlier work, is that like I would tell young me, and I'm sure you've heard this a bunch, like don't be so afraid. I mean, the worst that can happen is they're going to fire you. They usually don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, just even if it's some big director you're intimidated by and it's your first movie or whatever, like just do one for yourself. See if it works, you know?
Yeah. It's so much better than, whatever that is so much better than always trying to just please and being, just barely okay. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, because then you're just totally hemmed in. And it's, I think by definition, it can't be as emotionally powerful. I mean, I think if it's not coming from your guts and you're playing at something else. Really hard to do that too in certain circumstances when the day's moving quickly and the director just needs you to get something right, but
right.
And I think to have a long career you need to be able to do the hired gun stuff. Like we got 5 minutes before we go into overtime. You need to give us a good version of this scene.
Yeah.
And I wish we had all day to play, and all the stuff we're talking about here was always present and top of mind, and always a sublime experience. And I'm always seeking that. But some days it's just like, dude, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
Like, let's get it done. And you got to be that guy too.
Yeah, right. Was there a lot of talk about the tone to set with this monster?
I'd like to say it was a ton of work to figure out, but it was real. It was on the page, and I had read every draft of it. So Caroline is the sole writer on it, but I had given notes on a series of drafts. By the time we got to the table read with the cast that is in that movie, it was there, and I could just hear it. I could just hear it. And so best to learn it in a as neutral a way as possible, and then just show up and give yourself over to it. I mean, as we worked through a scene, we would huddle up and say, that felt a little too broad. I don't think this feels like we could occasionally, especially those first couple days, I think we realized that there was an opportunity to make the movie more romantic, and luckily we took it.
Yeah.
I think if there was any quote unquote work, it was Caroline and I, especially, we were the two holdovers from the short. We're approaching it with a little bit of like, this is fun and funny. This monster lives in this house, and then something was happening in the scenes with me and Melissa that we thought, oh, that's the way to go.
Interesting.
Let's follow that, and that's tough for a first-time director too. To say, this is my baby, but let's go a little deeper.
Yeah.
It became it. I say it was on the page, and it really was the voice of it, and I think that tricky tone. But I'd argue that we deepened it as we started doing.
That's interesting, because that really is what made it great.
Yeah.
Not just a good movie. I still would have liked it. You know what I mean? If it didn't go to that deep, because all of a sudden I'm like relating to things in this absurd situation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is interesting now. It's not just interesting as a premise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Maybe what I didn't realize is that like how, I want to choose my words carefully, but like how hard we could go at certain things. There's a scene, a walk and talk when we're in a park, and it's when Melissa's character finally kind of comes apart, the toll of the last couple months, with the monster's encouragement. And it is a purely dramatic scene. And I mean, this is going to sound cheesy. I forgot I was wearing the monster mask, you know? I mean, it just felt like just a big ass heavy scene where she's dealing with her trauma and I'm trying to pull her out of it. And like, and I think maybe after we shot that movie in 21 days. I mean, I think there was probably a moment we shot in Hoboken, probably flying back to LA where I thought, oh my God, is this going to work? Like, what did we just completely went for it, and there's no second chances, no takebacks, you know? And it does, and there's a lesson in there about just committing as fully as you can. I think if you're doing that movie with a wink, you're probably in trouble.
Exactly.
You know, it's probably what you're talking about.
Yes.
You'd be like, okay, you guys are proud of yourselves for doing a monster movie. But we figured out early on that just in for penny and for pound, just go for it.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the Saturday night movie?
So Jason Reitman and I go back about a decade. Oh. He is the guy that put me in Casual, my Hulu show. That was a big deal for me. That was the first. Was it the first time? It was the first time I'd been top of the call sheet on a show that ran multiple years. And so Jason and I got to know each other really well. We speak the same language. So he keeps me in mind for stuff. I did a movie that not enough people saw called The Front Runner a few years ago, where Hugh Jackman played Gary Hart.
He did that.
So,
didn't Reitman do that?
Yeah, that's Jason's too.
Yeah.
And I think he thought that there was something in me that aligned with Mike O'Donoghue. And so we did and God, I wish every audition experience was like this, because even though I know Jason, I think I don't necessarily look like Mike O'Donoghue. So there was, there's going to have to be some work on the look. So I wasn't this sort of obvious person for it early on. So I think he was going to have to show people that I could do it. So we did a work session. I went to an office, and we shot the hell out of one of those scenes. I think by the end of that session, we were both like, okay, this could work. I'm so grateful for it. It's I don't know that I've ever played someone who's so sort of joyously takes so much joy in being nasty. You know, it was a fun needle to thread, and going back to why why most of us got into this in the first place, it's like hanging out at the theater with all the other actor nerds. Like, it's such an ensemble piece, and it really felt like that. There were no trailers. Actually, there was a big building where we each had a dressing room, but it had this kind of clubhouse feel to it, and the way he shot that thing, we were all kind of around all the time, so it felt like a real company effort, which was really, really fun. And watching, I can't say enough good things about Jason, watching him work. He's really good with actors, but he's also, the way he sorts out the geometry of shot making is truly incredible. I mean, he was like a coach with a dry erase board every morning, talking to the camera team about, here's what I want to do. And but it's seamless. I mean, that movie has a real verite quality to it, but it was actually an elaborate dance. So that's one of those that, like, it's really nice to come back to a director because there's a shorthand, and back to being comfortable, relaxing, feeling a little more freedom to take some swings. Jason's one of those people that's employed me a few times, and when he calls, I try to make it work.
You said that you write and it goes hand in hand with your acting. Are you writing something for yourself to do?
I'm writing a couple things for myself now. I had a great writing partner for many years named Greg Bratman, and we wrote a bunch of television comedy. sold a bunch of shows to back when networks were NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, and but hindsight being 2020, I was like, I'm a writer. You know, when we're doing our stuff, I'm a writer only, and I'll cast it, and something about putting myself in it, I thought would distract me from the process of getting better at that and learning to produce television and stuff. I'd go back in time and try to put myself in some of those things, and that is what I'm trying to do now, going forward with a couple projects that I'm going to take into the marketplace in the new year. But even if I was just doing it as an exercise, I think as an actor, it gives you a certain reverence for the writing process. I mean, I think most actors, seasoned actors at the top of their game, don't do this, but some people can show up on set and can be a little disrespectful of the process. I'm just going to say it like this, and I haven't bothered to learn a damn thing. It's all just sort of an approximation of the line. and if you work your way through a few drafts of the screenplay, you know how much time that person has thought about those words. So I think it makes you a better part of the community to even just put on different hats as an exercise. So I would do it just for that. I'm more ambitious than that and want these things to get made. But I think furthermore, as an acting exercise, you're constantly, in writing a piece of material, constantly changing POV. At least for me, I'll go back and do a pass of a script from one character's POV, and then I'll switch and do a whole pass. Only for another character, and that's got to bear fruit in some way. I'm not articulate enough to tell you how, but and you know what else I know is that when I started writing professionally in my late 20s, early 30s, I started booking more acting work.
Interesting.
And I wouldn't be able to tell you why. Maybe it's a confidence thing, but
interesting.
My acting career took off at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you recommend actors write?
I do. Again, even if it's just for yourself.
Yeah.
Also, practically speaking, if and I'm too far removed to know what you need to do to be successful if you're a 20-year-old actor, coming into this world now and in 2024 with whatever the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that a big component of it is a self-startery, make your own stuff.
Yeah.
Because the world feels so vast. I don't know how. I don't think you can just sit by the phone and hope your agent's going to hook you up.
Right. Right. Tommy Dewey, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.